Hello, welcome back to the Benjy and Kyle podcast. Today we are going to be talking about the topic of magic or the supernatural. And specifically, I had a sort of question in the last few days running in my head. I asked myself, does magic exist? But, how do we even know if magic existed? Because what does that even mean? And, let's say for a second that magic existed. Let's say we existed in a world where magic existed. Well, the magic would have rules, and the rules would be the thing that allows the magic to happen, in which case isn't this essentially science? That's essentially the question that I was pondering, that
Mhm.
what differentiates magic from just technology or science?
Okay, cool. So I was thinking about this as well, and I thought it's good to start with the definition.
Hmm.
So my definition, as I was thinking about it, was similar to what you were kind of driving at, that, if it has these rules, then isn't it just science? So magic to me is whatever happens that doesn't seem like it follows the traditional rules of science. So we have all of these universal laws, and we know how the world works. And then all of a sudden, boom, here's something that goes totally against this.
Hmm.
A bird suddenly appears from a hat, or a rabbit, or, you know, a random card is pulled, and how on earth, would he know if it's truly random? That goes against the laws of probability. The rabbit in the hat goes against the conservation of mass or whatever, or um, or we could even get into miracles where all of a sudden the ocean is split. This goes against laws of nature that there are no storms powerful enough. How could you both walk through a sea that's split and also and have it be split by the wind or whatever? It goes against the laws of gravity of universal gravitation. So how I see it is once something if something is impossible, then it's magic. And if it's possible, then it's no longer magic. And the problem with this is that then magic can never truly exist because it happens, and then you say, hey, there must be a logical explanation for that, because otherwise, how's that possible? And I was thinking of other similar examples to where we've seen this. What's something else that ceases to exist once it it passes, once you recognize it for what it is? So like a revolution or something, you call it a revolution, but if the modern society eventually is shaped because of that revolution, then it's no longer a revolution. If you have music that's countercultural, and then all of a sudden it becomes mainstream, now it's not countercultural against it. It ceases to exist for what it was. So magic, if if you see it in the real world, to me, as someone that doesn't believe, I guess, in magic, I don't believe in the impossible happening to go against the laws of physics. And if I did see it in my face, I would know that there's some sort of rational explanation for it.
So I think you went a little bit off of what you've been saying so far when you said, because I don't believe in magic, or because I don't believe in something that contradicts the laws of physics. It's not just that you don't believe it, you're explaining that it is logically impossible. That if it happens, then it's part of the natural world, and so there is that we have to find an explanation for it. Maybe we don't yet have the explanation for it. As soon as it happens, it's not magic. So magic almost, but not almost. Magic by definition doesn't exist. That's what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, exactly that.
Okay.
So, if I went back in time before we understood more about the universe, and I saw a glowing uranium rod that's making people sick, I'd say, oh, magic, because I don't understand it.
Mhm.
But nowadays, anyone who calls that magic would be laughed at because we know why it is the way it is. And we know that once you see that it exists, it exists. So there's some sort of explanation for it. I mean, to give a more contemporary example. I was thinking about this using, one of these ChatGPT um, services or whatever. You interact with it, and it feels like magic because this was something previously not possible, 5 years ago. I remember when it came out, I was like, how? This is crazy. But I knew that there's a rational. I didn't start thinking, oh, this is a miracle. There's something. I looked into it. I said, hey, how did they manage to do this? Still seems like magic, but like it's part of it's also a matter of like wonder, like if you see someone, doing something amazing, if you call it magical, even though it's like, it follows the laws of physics, but if it's they put on a play that just feels magical, or a sunset, I don't know, Disneyland. So yeah,
I think that last point about wonder, I think that really gets to what magic is. And we can look at we can look at all sorts of places where magic happens, whether it's kind of like uh, illus, I don't know,
illusionary.
illusionary, if that's the right adjective, illusionary magic that real people do in real life, or like the magic in fiction. That wonder is like a key part of it. Like uh, I think it's in the Prestige even, where I think towards the middle of the movie, the Hugh Jackman character, he shows somebody the machine that allows him to kind of teleport to another place. Um, and he shows it, and the person, and he teleports, and it works. Like everything works, but the person's like, "That's not a trick. Like you have to bring yourself back. You have to make it a show. Like you can't just like do something that has no explanation. Like no one can, even if you do something that has no explanation, and everyone's like, I have no idea how you did that. If you don't do it in this flourishing way that makes like that interacts with the audience, that does something like I don't know that I'd have to think exactly like what the rules are. The even the movie The Prestige kind of outlines three things that I'm already forgetting, but there has to be I forget. The last one is The Prestige. That's all I remember. There are two steps before that.
A setup.
Yeah, I guess
Uh,
so. Basically, it's with the movie uses an example of the Michael Caine character making something disappear in front of a child. So first is the kind of like I guess you could call it the setup. I don't know if they use that word, but he basically introduces the object he's going to make disappear, and he shows the child what it is. So you set the stage, like okay, hey, look at this coin. It's an everyday object. It's a coin. All right, we're all familiar with coins. And then you make something weird happen. You make it disappear, and now it's gone. And then you make it come back. And then in the movie tries to show that making it come back is possibly the most important part of the trick, at least as important as making it disappear. Because you can't just make something disappear and be like, oh, look at that. It's cool that it disappeared, right? Like you have to bring it back because like it's as if the audience perhaps wants to be wowed, but only for a moment, and then they want sanity restored.
mm,
And if you don't restore sanity, then it's not a good show.
You just leave the audience insane,
Yeah,
questioning everything.
yeah.
Um, but so I'll take this to the next thing I was thinking about. What is it about magic? So we said wonder, we said, and I'm thinking also control and power,
Mm,
because that's sort of what you're saying. Not only can I make this thing disappear, I can make it appear. So then you have complete control over the object.
mm.
Because if you could just make things disappear, that like imagine, you just had a magician who could just make things disappear. That'd be pretty useless.
Right.
And
It's
I'm
purely destructive.
purely destructive. I suppose you could make the lock on a combination on a safe disappear, and then maybe there's some use to it.
Okay.
But then, so maybe you could think of something, but it'd be a pretty like I don't think somewhat people would like a magician who just makes things disappear.
Yeah.
It'd be pretty annoying.
Yeah.
Like, hey, he took my phone, he made it disappear. End of show. I want my phone back.
Right.
So something about that being able to manipulate objects at will, and that's a lot of the magic systems that we see. Like what does it mean? Let's say the classic Harry Potter magic, or I don't know, even you could even say the Wizards of Lord of the Rings magic. Any magic in the classical sense is like being able to impart your will on an object
Hmm.
through the use of incantations, words, and being able to manipulate it at will.
Hmm.
That's what people want. That's been the desire and the obsession with magic. Like, is there a shortcut I could do to, because back then when people didn't understand the world, and even as they start to understand, they start to see, oh, there are limits to science and skill and what you could do. I want a shortcut. I want to just be able to think it, to say it, and let it be, and
Hmm.
it'll be, and then I'll be, who else is like that? God. I'll be like ultimate God power, like being able to be above the rest of everyone. Just let there be light. Let me cast Avada Kedavra, and boom, you are dead. Expelliarmus.
Hmm.
Because you can technically, I was thinking about this, there's nothing really holding you back from, you know, a gun is basically a Vada Kedavra
Right.
when you think about it.
Yeah.
And no one thinks about that. They're like, oh, Vada Kedavra, that's so impressive. Magic. A gun, we already have that. You don't even
Hmm.
have to say it.
Yeah.
It works even faster. It's more powerful. Some things, even like in Harry Potter, are kind of weird. Like, they're still using owls. Why aren't they? I mean, things do progress a bit, but like we have cell phones. Those are way more powerful than things wizards use, and that's a cultural thing for wizards. But
Yeah, I mean, to the point that magic is kind of a matter of perspective, there's a number of amusing scenes in Harry Potter, like when Gilderoy Lockhart loses his memory, and then Harry and Ginny and Ron, I think, yeah, ride Fox with him out of the Chamber of Secrets. He's forgotten all about what magic is, so he like experiences this flying out of the Chamber of Secrets on the tail of a phoenix as, oh my gosh, this is just like magic. He thinks this is the most amazing thing, whereas Harry and Ron and Ginny are, think it's kind of normal at that point. Um, and then
because I think he was born a Muggle. He's Muggle born.
Gilderoy Lockhart,
I'm pretty sure.
I maybe I don't remember that part. I just, even if he wasn't, I just assume that the
No, it wouldn't make any sense because he'd have no scale for like his entire life would be magic. So therefore, nothing. What would you have to compare to? Although I guess wizards still call themselves magical because they know about Muggles.
yeah. So right, even wizards who grew up in the magical world, yes, to them they're used to it, but they are aware that they are in a sense superior, at least by ability, to Muggles, that they possess something special because they know that Muggles don't have it.
Mhm. Our viewers can fact check us, but I'm pretty sure that Gilderoy Lockhart was Muggle born,
Muggle born.
and he was not so spectacular or out of the ordinary as a student, and he invented this persona to compensate for that. That's I think the backstory.
Yeah, no, that part's
Right,
for sure. That's part of the story that he's a fraud.
right. Maybe I'm just racist against Muggles. It's possible. Um,
But I don't follow. You're saying that he must be
because
Muggle born.
you're right. No, but I'm pretty sure it also in that time when it's giving that backstory, they mentioned that he's a Muggle born. But if
Okay.
not, then I'm a racist because I just assumed he must be Muggle born because he wasn't such a, a good magician. No, I don't know. I'm just pretty sure.
Okay.
All right, we'll leave from that point.
Uh,
I can't be racist. I'm a Muggle. I don't know.
right.
We'll move on. So there are there's something else I saw about what Arthur C. Clarke said. I don't know if you're familiar with his three laws.
No.
So Arthur C. Clarke, a big sci-fi writer, technically related to my wife, fun fact, and we have a signed Hebrew edition of an Arthur C. Clarke book, which I wager is unique in the world.
I wager as well. That's really
Yeah,
cool. I didn't know that.
yeah. So hopefully, yeah, we're keeping it safe in Ziploc.
Is he Jewish?
No,
Okay.
so that's why it's probably unique.
Uh huh.
Isaac Asimov was,
Uh-huh.
but so what he says, okay, he has three rules The most important one, okay, there's the first one, which I'll just say. When a distinguished but elderly scientist states that something is possible, he is almost certainly right. When he states that something is impossible, he is very probably wrong. So that has a little bit to do with magic. It doesn't touch as much upon it, but when he says something's impossible, probably wrong, because who knows what could happen in the future? Who knows what we could further develop? So we'll come back to that maybe.
Okay.
The second thing he says is the only way of discovering the limits of the possible is to venture a little way past them into the impossible. So that's how we, develop. We don't, when we say, oh, teleportation, that's kind of a recent concept because I think, well, or maybe not, but um, as we learn more about like the world, um, these are kind of the questions we were asking. Like, wait, is faster than, let's say, faster than light travel? You know, that's something they wouldn't have thought about 100 years ago because they didn't even know that there was a cosmological light speed,
Uh-huh.
like limit. So that's only something like we look what's if we want to look at the next sci-fi, like it'll probably evolve over time. Sci-fi that's based off of robots is probably not so impressive nowadays because we have them.
Uh-huh.
Um, and the last thing, and then you can say whatever you want to say. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So that's the big one. That's his big famous one. That he's basically saying there's an equivalence between magic and technology, and it's just a matter of how advanced it is.
Yeah. I I'll start with the first one. I'm not a fan of the first one. I don't really agree with the first one. Um, that somebody who says something is impossible is most probably wrong, and somebody who says something is possible is probably right. So, of course, there were things that people in the past thought were impossible, and we've discovered that they are possible. And of course, there were things that people thought were think are impossible now, and we'll find out that they are possible. But when you consider the number of things that we can imagine doing, it is far greater than the number of things that we have done so far, as well as the number of things that we thought were impossible and then became possible. So you can't really extrapolate from a few examples of things in the past where people thought something was impossible, it became possible, to then say, well, maybe everything is really possible if you just give us enough time, enough resources. Um, there definitely seem to be things that are impossible. Um,
I agree. I think when he said that, it's kind of like at a time when technology was like really leaping.
mhm.
There's kind of this bell curve. I think about, or not. It's not a bell curve, I guess. It's just a slowing down, maybe of rapid technological advancement.
Yeah.
Maybe it's still. I think it's plateauing, but we could have a different discussion about that. But he lived, I think, in the we'd have to double check, but I'm pretty sure around, like 1950s was probably the middle of his life.
Uh-huh.
So he was living at a time where, a lot of things that they didn't think were possible ever, uh, were starting to become possible.
Yeah.
That he lived through the Industrial Revolution, you know, so many changes throughout his life. He lived at a time when people couldn't fly, and then
He lived
he
before.
lived.
Yeah.
He was born probably right before it, and
Uh-huh.
then boom, they did.
Yeah.
People going to space. People like during his lifetime.
The fact that only 66 years separate the invention of flight to the first landing on the moon is really insane. Am I right about 66 years? 1969 or 1967 is the moon landing.
69.
Okay, so 66 years from 1903 to 1969 is the first time we flew in an airplane all the way to getting to the moon. Only 66 years. It's pretty crazy.
Well, it's just a slightly longer flight. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, it is. It's crazy.
right. It's a much longer flight, and yeah, pretty cool.
Mhm. So I'm just fact checking when he lived. Yeah, he was born in 1917, He died in 2008, so he was born slightly after the
Okay.
first flight of the Wright brothers.
But also, like, I don't know if there were commercial flights then.
Right. I think, well, there were Zeppelins in World War One.
For the military, or like were people paying money to somebody to ride them?
I think so. By that point,
Okay.
it was just taking off. No pun intended.
Yeah, nice.
But I think it did grow pretty fast. The whole aviation industry.
Uh-huh.
Like they already in World War One, they did have, fighter
Planes, yeah.
planes and air dogfights.
Yeah, yeah. But I was
They're
wondering.
pretty slow, but yeah.
Yeah. But usually things start in the military before getting to
hmm
the wider public, so I was wondering if
hmm
it was really that widely accessible at that point.
Right. Well, yeah, it became definitely very quickly during his early lifetime accessible. But so he talks about sufficiently advanced technology being indistinguishable from magic, and you could think about, like, I don't know, why can't we do? I mean, I sort of mentioned this before. Why can't we do anything in Harry Potter in the real world? Like, if instead of a phoenix, you just have a drone, you know, that I get with some cancer treatment on board. I don't know. Like, you could also heal all sorts of illnesses. It'd be a weird combination, but you could create such a thing. Maybe
An
like a
invisibility cloak.
visibility cloak. There are technologies that allow you to bend the incoming light rays around you. Um, I have seen it with, like, not with a fabric, because that's you need something very solid.
Mm.
Um, but it is feasible. I mean, using just a camera on the other side and some sort of display on your cloak to mirror what you see behind you. They did it in Mission Impossible. There's this one scene where they go down the corridor, um, but behind a big screen that they set up, like on wheels, and the guard sees it, and all it's doing is it's displaying this loop that they had filmed right before of an empty corridor, and they're just running behind it.
Okay.
Technically, invisibility, like
It's not invisibility. It's
an illusion
right.
of invisibility.
It's possible to accomplish something similar in the sense that you don't allow people to detect you, but I wouldn't say that you have made yourself invisible.
So, what is true invisibility? Is air is invisible enough to you? Is water's not invisible? Because still has light refracting and bending off of some of the molecules in the water.
Water is not invisible. Air is
even clean water.
Sometimes invisible.
Okay. Air, you're talking about, like, maybe smoke wouldn't be invisible, but
right.
Many gases are invisible.
Yes.
Because they let light pass through them without interacting or refracting off the matter.
Yeah, I wasn't prepared for a technical definition of invisibility. Yeah, it's like, I don't know. Come back to me.
Okay.
It means that you can't see it.
Right. Technically, I think if you have enough layers of air, like you can see the horizon. I don't know if that's like, if you look at the horizon, you see it's smoggy. I don't know if that's just because, or you see something. I don't know if that's because of dirt in the air, or just a very intense concentration of air that eventually it becomes.
Here's why
it blocks more light.
But so here's why the Mission Impossible thing is not being invisible, because it's a matter of perspective. If I was on the other side of the screen, I would see them, right?
Okay, so you set up a screen on the other side, doing the same thing.
Like a fully enveloping screen.
A fully enveloping cloak.
A cloak screen. Yeah, a cloak. A cloak that reflects whatever the person is.
I imagine
okay,
if you're
at that point,
Harry holding up the invisibility cloak in front of you and not behind you, then your back would still be visible. And I'm pretty sure that's how they show it in the movie.
No, for sure. Yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Okay, but we could let's say you want to make a dragon. You could biologically engineer a dragon in theory. You'd have to do a lot of DNA messing with, take the DNA of a bird and genetically modify it over time.
What about telling the future?
Maybe not breathing fire, but you could telling the future.
Yeah.
There we get into paradoxes.
Do we?
With time travel, yes.
What's the paradox? This isn't time travel. This is divination, prophecy.
Prophecy. Well, it's similar to going back in time. Well, it's equivalent to going back in time and passing like information to someone.
Okay.
So if you tell the future about someone, then like you'll have the same paradoxes. Like
It's no longer the future.
it's no longer the future if they can alter it.
Uh-huh.
If yeah, is there you'll run into the same exact problems. Is there free will? Whose future is ordained?
Hmm.
Is it just a specific someone or
Interesting. There are similarities I see. I what just came to mind is, for example, in Lord of the Rings, got Gadriel,
Galadriel?
Galadriel, Galadriel can tell the future, or she shows the future to Frodo, but she specifies that it is just something what could happen. Um, it can change. Like maybe it's just like given the current circumstances, this is where things are headed. But your knowledge of this can, and you can use your knowledge of this to make different choices. You can. It doesn't have to happen.
Right. In which case, what's the difference between that and just, being a smart person giving some sage advice? And, a lot of the times they'll make it kind of murky, give this, add some sort of performance to it, give it that magical essence. But what all they're really doing, is saying this could happen. Unless it actually has to happen, like in Harry Potter when Trelawney predicts
Yeah. So then
like
I was going to
Harry
say,
is the chosen one,
yeah,
and it happens. But it's unclear if it's Harry or Neville. It leaves some room, that seeing the future is never a clear cut art, as she says.
yeah, yeah. Also, her prophecy about Peter Pettigrew at the end of the third book, which we think is about Sirius Black when she gives it. It's vague enough that you could apply it to
Hmm.
multiple people. Retroactively, we know it applies to Peter Pettigrew because he's the only one who actually satisfies what the prophecy said.
In which case, it kind of becomes a little useless. Like, what was the point? So that she could show off that she told the future. It's like it's similar to astrology, where it's a lot of this will happen to you today, but it's so vague that it's effective because people, there's so much happens in someone's life that they say, oh, this must have been that they was talking about. And I mean, maybe in the case where she really predicts that Harry is the chosen one and he listens to the prophecy, then he knows that it must be him to finish it off, and that gives him, a bit of confidence. He knows he's locked in, he can't run away. This is it. It's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it has a utility ultimately.
Yes. Wait, I want to go back to the Lord of the Rings for a second to answer the question of what is the difference between Galadriel knowing the future and just somebody giving sage advice. The difference is, and this isn't something exactly provable, because the moment, actually, maybe it is, I'll explain. But basically, if Frodo never saw the vision of what would happen, or if we as the audience never saw the vision, would the vision happen? And Lord of the Rings is claiming, at least in the story, that the answer is yes. This is exactly what would happen if no one saw the vision.
So it's kind of an intervention saying this is what would happen. It's not really it's unfalsifiable because we don't know. You can't prove it like you're saying.
So maybe it is falsifiable if somebody who is somehow completely separate from the events were to see the vision, but he has no ability to affect them because he's completely disconnected from them. So he just sees it as a matter of research. And then he watches things play out, and no one who is affected by the events sees the vision. The vision happens exactly as it was prophesied. Although I'm not positive, my Lord of the Rings knowledge isn't so great. I'm not positive that Lord of the Rings actually does make that claim. I wonder if even if nobody knows it, Tolkien might believe that people still have free will and like things could still change, which then does get to okay, then what exactly is the purpose or use of the prophecy? But
Mhm.
if it's the case that it's only because of my knowledge of the prophecy that I could change it, then by not knowing it, the prophecy is assured to be accurate. We're at least talking about something that is not just sage advice,
Mhm.
even though it's of course unfalsifiable, but it's fiction. So
Right. It's an interesting.
mhm.
Yeah, I'm wondering like what is the utility of knowing what will happen if you have no uh, any effect on it whatsoever, other
Mhm.
than to prove, oh, look at Galadriel, she can tell the future. Um,
Mhm.
it's interesting because even if you had a computer, when we've spoken about this before, perfect simulations, is it possible to predict the future? If you did have a computer powerful enough to have all the information in the universe, because it's really hard to isolate something completely from the universe. You have the butterfly effect, one action leads to another, and that ripples across the entire universe,
Yeah.
or at least, somewhere. Um, if you build such a computer, could predict the future, it's going to contain itself in that universe.
Uh-huh.
And like unless you like let's say you print out the prediction, maybe it is possible to divine the future that way. You within some scientific futurology um, paradigm. If you give that to someone, you'll run into the same problems that we were talking about. That how will they know it's truly the future? Because then they'll interact with this machine, they'll interact with the universe. The machine contains itself, which in the universe, which is a whole problem in itself, because it has to be able to predict its own future processing. So it'd have to take itself out of the equation, predict the entire universe uh, outside of it, which is not truly the universe, but okay. And you'd have the same problems. You look at it, okay, you'd have to stay in a box somehow, not affecting anything, and then come out in 5 years and see does everything truly line up with the prediction. And this really assumes, none of that chaotic butterfly effect. Even being in the box might be enough.
Uh-huh.
And maybe the universe is so slightly different because it doesn't his its prediction of the future doesn't contain you or itself anything with knowledge of the future. What if you get enough of a different universe because of that? But but maybe not. Maybe it is theoretically possible to build such a thing.
Maybe. There's a reason why all the times where people can tell the future in fiction, the ones that I can think of, um, there has to be some limitation to it, or there has to be some reason why it's more of a curse than a blessing. It's like Anakin learns that Padme will die, and then he tries to save her, but all of his efforts to save her actually just lead to her death. Or Galadriel shows Frodo, but it's not a very clear vision and also doesn't necessarily happen. Or Trelawney makes a prediction, but it's so cryptic that you have no way of knowing what it means until the events occur. Things like that.
I would wager that you know why was Rowling so brilliant to make the Trelawney character the way she is.
Mm-hmm.
She's a bit of like a little crazy, a little, you could tell that when she doesn't have the power, she's kind of making it up
Yeah.
and you can tell that it's kind of like a survival mechanism to not actually know the future. She forgets right after she makes a prediction what she actually said because it is a curse to know it's a curse and a blessing. Like you said, like it'll drive you crazy.
Uh-huh.
What if the fate of the world? What's going to happen tomorrow? Like here's a question for you. Would you like to know how you die?
Um, no, I mean, there's a certain temptation, obviously, but I'm convinced that the wiser answer is no. So I will use my will to say no, even if I was given such a opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, like I wonder, what if someone told me I'm going to get hit by a bus? You know, would I start being more careful around buses? Does it not make a difference because I'm going to die anyways?
Right.
Um, like, I guess part of you run into that paradox problem of do you have any free will? Are you going to die by bus no matter what you do?
Uh-huh.
Or could it be that you're gonna, maybe being aware of being hit by a bus will, instead of being hit by a bus in 5 years, you'll be hit by a bus in 20 years because you're more careful. I don't know, like with cancer, heart disease, you could say similar things. Or
Uh-huh.
maybe it's better not to know at all because it'll just drive you crazy.
Right. And so there's also a song by Tim McGraw called "Live Like You Were Dying." You're familiar, right?
Uh, from the No, I don't actually know.
Son, I hope you get the chance. Live like you were dying. Basically, he learns that he has cancer, and then he sings about all the things that he did before he died. Like, I went skydiving, and then he says like, I wish you got the chance someday to live like you were dying.
I know the Nickelback. If today was your last day,
Yeah,
and tomorrow was too late, would you say goodbye to yesterday? Would you
exactly.
live each moment like your last?
There you go.
Evil
Sing it,
in
Benjy.
the past. Donate every dime you had.
There you go. Should have used Nickelback as an example. Um, so you can't like, you know, one of the one of the bad things that can happen if you were to learn when you die is to learn that it is going to be in a long time, because when you don't have that knowledge, you don't actually know that it's not going to be very soon. So you can't just say to yourself like, oh well, I know it's going to be in like 80 years or something. Um, you can't say that. We can't say that in our lives, because even though thank God we're healthy, like listen, like you never know, like things happen. So like don't just waste all your time. Don't just do obviously we still waste time, and like it's hard to like no one wants to work hard, but still there's like still that something underneath us that's like okay, but like nothing's a guarantee, so I should try to do something. I should try to like live now, or I should try to figure out my problems now or something like that.
It's interesting.
Mhm.
So maybe I don't know. Maybe I would want to know how I died, depending on what it is. Which is you can't really do that.
uh-huh.
But I was thinking about what you just said. If they say you're going to die in 80 years, well, A, what does that mean? Does that mean that I could jump off a bridge and nothing will happen?
uh, I mean, I could answer it a few ways. I could answer, you'll die in 80 years if you don't do anything like that.
Mhm. Maybe I'll just be paralyzed for the next 80 years and a
Or that,
vegetable.
yeah. Like, the prophecy will make sure you live, but you'll be, like, in a coma or
Right.
paralyzed, yeah.
So, right. So maybe we should. Okay. So I'll say something before that, and then we should discuss maybe some of the solutions to the time travel paradox.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's interesting because if today, if you lived every day like your last, if it was me, if I knew, let's say the doctor gave me 10 days to live,
Hmm.
I probably would. I don't know if I'd go a mixture of crazy, but also spend every day, doing something meaningful. Definitely not sleeping in or,
Hmm.
wasting so much time. If he gave me like 3 years left to live, even a year, I don't know, I'd probably wind up falling back into some routine eventually, or I'd probably just drop everything, go traveling. I don't know. It would definitely change your priorities a bit.
Yeah.
It's a little scary to think of like, what if I had, a job supporting my family, um, you know, all these kids, let's say, then my doctor said I had 6 months left to live. To just stop working might, that'd be what I wouldn't want to keep working.
Hmm.
But on the other hand, what if I have to support, my family for I don't know, I can't just disappear. So it's a weird.
Well, I mean, so you have to ask yourself, like, okay, like at this moment where I have learned that I'm dying in 6 months, but I have a family to support, do I have any savings? These are savings that I held on to thinking that I'd be living for the next
Right.
40, 50
So
years.
yeah, there's insurance,
And
savings,
if you have life insurance,
presumably.
yeah,
Let's say you don't have any of that and you're kind of just day to day.
you're day to day, and there's no life insurance either.
Yeah. Well, you don't get well, I don't know if you could get life insurance at that point. Um, can you?
Uh,
Or okay, let's say you had life insurance. Okay, let's say you didn't have life insurance.
okay, and you have no savings.
Yeah.
Well, you still can um, go to work each day with the intention that you continue to support your family while you're here. And then with you come home with a renewed vigor each day, and you spend time with your kids, and you make the work a part of your 6 month plan. Like, okay, I'm gonna work each day, but I'm gonna work knowing that like I'm like this is my last 6 months, and maybe I'll even get pleasure from it, and or maybe I'll do it because I know that like I need to leave money for my kids, and also I have like I'm so excited to go home at the end of the day to like see my kids.
Hmm. Well, that would, you would be a much stronger man
Oh well.
or anyone who could do that
Can't take credit for that
would be
hypothetical
right.
situation.
I have so much more respect for you. Just knowing what you would do,
Yeah,
theoretically, maybe.
yeah. Okay, so
Yeah,
what were you thinking?
of what I would do,
Yeah,
or
like even living day to day, no life insurance, no savings. You
I'd
have
probably just go insane. That'd be the first.
yeah.
I'd go to my doctor, ask for some very strong antidepressants to
Okay.
get me through every day,
Okay.
so that I actually use my time wisely.
Uh-huh.
I'd probably spend most time with, half the time with family, half the time spending what little money I have traveling.
Uh-huh.
It would be tough,
Yeah.
and I can't judge anyone in that same position. Um, yeah, I don't want to go on record for saying, I would do some morally questionable things, but
It would make you feel good.
it wouldn't, maybe, who knows? Antidepressants, that's the key. Yeah, so I did want to talk about just some time travel paradoxes because
Okay.
we keep touching on it, but never like addressing it.
Yeah. Oh wait, can I actually say on magic for one more point?
Yeah, sure.
We talked about wonder. I think similar to wonder is mystery. They might go hand in hand, but there's a subtle difference, perhaps. I think in every magical system that I know of in fiction, there always has to remain an element of mystery, even in hard magic systems. Granted, I haven't read a lot of fiction about with hard magic systems. I don't usually prefer hard magic. I prefer soft magic, possibly because of what I'm saying. That I think in order for it to feel like magic, there has to be mystery in the sense that like we don't fully know how this works. Um, but even like I recently read Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, and that is I guess more of a hard magic. I don't know if people classify it as hard magic, but it's certainly more hard magic than Harry Potter, where it's like okay, there are very specific rules as to how each metal works and how burning metals work and everything. But even so, and I think probably Sanderson is aware of what I'm saying. If he's not aware of it in his conscious mind, he's aware of it subconsciously, and that's why he wrote the story this way. Even so, Mistborn is full of mystery veiling the magical system. Like it's sort of like hard magic, but at the same time, there's always these little bits and pieces that like, why is that? Why did that happen that way? Or what? There was something more here to explore. I haven't even finished the trilogy, but in the first book, for example, um, avoiding spoilers for anyone in the audience, um, there's the hard magic system that the main character learns, but we eventually discover that the mentor character who was teaching the magical system to the main character didn't actually know everything about the magical system, and there are these interesting things that the main character comes across in the story that no one was aware of, and it was mysterious. It was mysterious why she was able to do certain things and other people weren't able to do certain things. And I just know I just it's hard to explain more than just this gut feeling that like that's such a key part of magic and fiction. Like you can't have a purely hard magic system where everything is explained because then it's not magic. It is just science. There always has to remain a piece that's like why what is that? There's something more going on here that it's basically the way we understand it, but it's not quite the way we understand it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that short interjection. I did want to get back to magic.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to mention um, the because we were talking about time travel. I just wanted to close that up a bit. But I do
Okay.
have some things to say about that.
Okay.
So just to close up the time travel thing. Sorry to the audience if the back and forth, but we have the paradox. It could be called the grandfather paradox.
Yes.
That's where you could go back in time, kill your grandfather. Who was it that then went back in time? How could you have then gone back if you were never born? How could you go back in time?
Yeah.
Or if you're the reverse, you go back in time and then you become your own grandfather, as Fry did in Futurama or something.
How does that happen?
Uh, you marry your grandmother.
Okay, you go back in time and marry your grandmother. Okay, yeah.
And then you disappear, and no one knows what happened to grandfather. So it's a similar paradox because who was it to then go back in time in the first place to make you born? We said it's like equivalent to just sending information. Um,
Hold on.
you're
What's the
saying,
paradox with becoming your own grandpa?
well, who, how did you ever, like, you became,
Right.
you were born,
Yeah.
and only then you went back in time
Yeah. Yeah.
to, so the truth is, um,
How were you born in the first
yeah,
place?
yeah. So and this is basically sending information anytime outside of your cone of time, as I think Einstein talks about this, about like what you could actually, like, it expands outwards at the speed of light. You can't interact with anything outside of that, because you could travel at a different rate in time compared to someone, but you can't go past that limit of you know going into their future. There's still like this relative cone of time that each object observer in the universe has. Um, Not that that really has much to do with anything, but so how do you resolve this paradox? So either there's no free will and you can't kill him, um, and so like even if you do try to kill your grandfather, like something will happen that stops that from happening.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's sort of similar to the Harry Potter time travel. Uh, no, yeah.
Fine. What are you about to say?
That like they couldn't, like anything that they do see, uh, like they see themselves in the past, but they don't interact with them. They can't really interact, or if they do, they go insane, or no one. But there's some sort of limitation keeping them. Maybe you wanted to.
There's a more defining way of explaining the Harry Potter time travel and
Mhm.
what makes it different from maybe like Back to the Future. In Harry Potter, you can interact with the environment in the past. You can also talk to yourself.
But you go insane, and no one believes you, and
Well, Hermione argues that it could make you go crazy because it is a weird experience.
but whatever happened in the past happened. So like when she went back in time, she already, like, she heard a noise of something breaking. She's so smart, whatever, that she realizes, oh,
Yeah.
that's the future me. But like I think it, to me, I got the feeling that there was this vague, murky feeling to the whole essence of time travel, that it seemed like there was still some sort of limitation. Like, yes, don't interact, try your best not to interact with yourself, but
the the limitation is that you can't deviate from your predestined path, but you don't know your predestined path until you do it.
Mhm.
We should explain Harry Potter. Let's let you continue and explain the solutions to the
Mhm.
grandfather paradox.
Yeah. So the other one is that multiverses, it's just when you go back in time, you go and then you interact with your grandfather, you've created a whole different branch of time.
Mhm.
Now whatever happens, if you kill your grandfather, you kill any chance of yourself being born in that universe, but you'll still be in that universe, um, that you came from originally. So
So you can go back in time, kill your grandfather. You are now in an alternate universe from the one that you started in,
mhm,
where you have a grandfather, and in that universe your grandfather is still alive.
right.
And now you're in this alternate universe, and you are no longer in the first universe. You're
Yes.
in this alternate universe, and you are al- logically allowed to exist here because you popped into this universe from a different universe in which you logically exist, in which you exist because you were born
Mhm.
and because you have a grandfather who's alive. But then you came to this universe, and
And
so is
killed your
there another
grandfather.
you in this alternate universe?
Well, there would have been eventually if you didn't kill your grandfather.
Okay, you killed your grandfather before you were born.
Yeah.
Right.
If you didn't, then you would meet another version of yourself, um, in a different universe, and you would stop existing in the previous universe. So, in a way, you die, but you don't die. Um, Personally, I like this. Like you die, you cease to exist from your previous universe. I like this explanation more than anything. The another one is just that time travel is not possible. I don't like that one. The other one is that you're like, it's not an explanation, but you'd be stuck in this time loop where, like, let's say you go back in time, um, marry your grandmother, you're born. You're forced to go back in time again, marry your grandmother, be born, go back in time, marry your forever. You're stuck, endless loop forever, because otherwise it's not like you can't break the loop because otherwise you would stop existing.
Well, hold on. You go back in time, marry your grandmother, and then you remain in that timeline and just continue living.
Sure,
But then you are,
eventually born.
but it's not you who are eventually born. It's your past you.
Okay, are you your past you?
No.
Okay, so no problem.
I'm not saying I'm not understanding how it's a loop, because you go back in time, you marry your grandmother, the two of you grow old together, live happily ever after, and have grandchildren, and then you die eventually.
Hmm. But then
Your grandson happens to be you,
born again,
born again, who gets to your point in life,
goes
goes back in time,
time.
marries his grandmother, but it's a different you.
Different you.
Yeah,
Why?
you are living your stream of consciousness, went back in time, and then is the grandfather who doesn't then go back in time again. He just lives out his life with his beloved wife
Okay.
and grandmother, married to his beloved grandmother.
Exactly, but
and then he just
were you not Cal Shear born in Indianapolis? Were you not the same person at 5? No way you weren't. In a way you were. You have the shared stream of consciousness, but you don't. But you do.
no, it's not the same thing at all. Okay, it's the year 2000. John goes back in time to the year
1950.
1950. Okay. John goes back in time to the year 1950 when his grandmother is 20 years old. And he's 20 years old in 2000, let's say. John is now in the year 1950 at age 20. John does not exist. John, the any other John, does not exist in the year 1950, right? He is born, the John that we know of is born in 1980.
Okay.
You with me so far? So 20-year-old.
I suspect you're just going to repeat the same thing that we said before.
Well, I'm making it more concrete and clear.
Maybe if you repeat it again,
Because
buy it.
there's no way that you can respond the way you responded to what I said if I say it clear, because it's not what you described. 20-year-old John goes back in time to 1950. Okay? So now John is in 1950. All right? He falls in love with a lady who happens to be his grandmother. But it's the 20-year-old version of his grandmother. And they get married. And they have babies. And they live very happy. And they grow old. And then when it comes to 1980, right, we reach the year 1980. And the John that went back in time is now 50 years old. He was 20 in 1950, and now he's 30 years later, he's 50 years old. His wife is 50 years old. They have a life together. They have children. Their children are having babies. John is born in the year 1980, but it's a different John. It's not John is there as a grown-up, as a 50-year-old man. He knows that he now has a grandson, who I guess must also be named John in order for this to be consistent. But maybe because of his actions, they named him something else. Maybe he changed the timeline. Who knows? But let's say they call him John. It doesn't matter. It's him. It's not him. He'll eventually grow older, and we'll see. Maybe 20 years later, he'll be 70. His grandson will be 20, and he'll see, oh, you're me. He'll understand. But it's not him. He is just living, and he lives older, and he's not stuck in a loop. And neither is the other John. He's not stuck in a loop either. There's just there's an endless stream of Johns. But not each
endless.
But neither one is stuck in a loop.
Neither one.
Neither one is stuck in a loop.
Really?
Really.
Okay. If we're saying it's not a multiverse thing, you're saying single universe.
Yeah, single universe.
Single instance of John.
Well, there are multiple instances of John that are created.
How many instances are there of Cal? Who hasn't gone back in time?
One.
Why is there only one Cal and not a billion Cals for every time segment? Because, I mean, that maybe there should be. But you're all the same Cal. You're all, in this one universe, there's only one John. This is the same John that was born and went back in time and married his grandmother.
No.
It's the same John.
So then how is it? So hold on. If you go back in time and marry your grandmother, so you go back in time, and then time progresses, and then it comes time for you to be born. Who gets born?
You.
You. But you're also not born. You're alive. You've been alive for 40, 50 years.
Right. We could simplify this to just going back in time 1 minute
Okay.
and talking to yourself 1 minute ago, even though that opens up a whole slew of paradoxes.
Okay, very well. So I go
Because
back.
now
I go
you're
back in time 1 minute. There are now two of me in a minute ago, or there's only one of me.
Well, now there are two of you because you're looking at yourself 1 minute ago, and he's about to step into the time thing.
He is,
He
but
is.
I'm not. I already went back in time.
No,
I'm not
okay.
gonna do
You
it
go
again.
back in time. You see yourself about to step into the machine.
Yeah.
And then you're like, uh-oh. And then what happens?
Nothing for me.
Well, why not? You see a
The
guy
guy disappears.
disappears,
Yeah,
and then
and then I just live my life. Maybe I'll go back in time again, but I don't want to. I already did it.
okay. But what if you? Okay, if you speaking to him, okay.
Okay.
According to the Cal in the previous podcasts, there's only one Cal, one spirit, one soul. But okay, leaving aside that,
Wait, you're talking
because
about in episode 4?
Return of the
A
A New Hope.
A New Hope? Episode 4 of the Cal and Benjy podcast, I said that there's only one Cal. Yeah, in a way. Not in the way that we're describing right now.
Oh, okay.
In this context, there are more Cals.
Okay. So okay, I don't think we'll necessarily agree on this. But I can tell you I'm not the first one to think this. And it just makes sense to me that this is a loop of different streams of consciousness, but you're stuck in this that cow will have to go back in time because otherwise that won't exist. And then the next cow will go back in time. Whereas in a normal universe, you just have one cow going straight forward in time, no loops, blah blah blah. I agree. Maybe it's fine. Maybe like
Okay.
this is a different cow. I
Okay.
have no problem with that because I think that everything is different, at every single instance in nature.
Okay.
When it comes to the multiverse theory, though, I think that that's the best explanation because that avoids a lot of the paradoxes. You go back in time, it's just a different universe. I think it also kind of fits with our current idea of quantum mechanics, which is that everything is probable at the smallest state, where there's no necessarily explanation for anything um, taking for any quantum sized matter to take a or particle to take a certain path, and why choose one path over the other. Well, all paths maybe are taken, and it's just this one universe that we see is just happens to be one of the infinite amount of paths the particle could have taken, and therefore, like at any instance, just there's an infinite number of universes just expanding across everything. It's an interesting way to look at it. Very difficult to actually, prove, and but it would explain why things take an arbitrary path.
Wait, something else about the multi-universe theory of time travel. My problem with it, and I'm speaking more from a perspective of what does it mean. Benji's more of a scientific, looking at it from a scientific perspective. But my problem with it is that it takes away the moral significance of time travel. Why would I go back in time if I'm only going to affect an alternate universe? I can't affect my universe, right? Let's say I want to go back in time to save my wife from dying. Well, I can't. I can only save a different woman from dying, who will appear to me as my wife, but it's from a different universe. The wife I know in this universe, I cannot save.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know what you mean by scientific point of view. Like, it's just like a regular point of view. But
Okay,
it does. You do raise a very interesting and disturbing point.
Okay.
That maybe the implications are you have an infinite amount of beloved family members. Why save one over the other? And if you ever watch Rick and Morty, they touch on this a lot. They go back and they screw up their own universe, so they go to another universe and just kill their previous selves or something. Or they go to a universe where their previous selves were about to die in a horrible accident, and they're like, "Oh, we'll go there and just take their spot,"
Mm-hmm.
and then they have to bury themselves in the backyard. And then they get because of all their adventures, they get swapped. Like, oh, is this my original Morty? No, it's a different one. And
Okay.
it it leads to a very disturbing conclusion that, okay, what is, morality? Maybe, we are just a bunch of atoms at the end of the day, and it's just human projection onto reality, morality. What's the difference between, as Dr. Manhattan says, in Watchmen, he's like, what's the difference between a dead body and a live one? It's the same atoms. From a molecular point of view, there's no difference, which there is a difference between, a live body where there's definitely energy and happening, there's a process of energy and metabolism occurring. We could get into definition of life, whatever. We maybe spoke about that, but it's something that we, place on it. It's interesting because, in Rick and Morty, his wife does die, and he could go back into a different universe and take her, like find another one, but he doesn't. And I'm not sure I really watched enough of the episodes to know why not, but it could be, something to do with uh, he's always going to lose her no matter what. He's going to wind up taking her, well, maybe not taking her away because he could just get her from a universe where he's about to die or something. But or maybe there's like something like he knows this is a point of his life that he just has to move past. Um, there's nothing he could do about it. It's like the Anakin problem. He has to learn to accept what's going to happen. Trying to fight it will only make it worse. Um, but so to get back to what you were saying and to tie this in, you were talking about like the when it comes to magic, time travel, whatever it is, there has to be this wonder to it. And I think it's definitely one of the things, in fantasy, magic, blah, blah. It's not just the ability to affect things at will. There's also magical creatures, sure, whatever that means. Um, but there's also a sense of destiny and what you will, like, telling the future, like, this is going to happen. However, it does happen is up to you. But ultimately, we're going towards the book is going towards something.
Mhm.
Um, Even the most subversive fantasy plots like Game of Thrones, you could still argue that, even though it hasn't finished, each character does have like a fate that he's marching towards. In some book, like in Mistborn or something, you were saying it's not just about their powers, it's about what's going to happen. Like, she has to save the world at the end of the day.
That wasn't what I was saying, but that's
But
a fine addition
uh,
to the
so
conversation.
that's but you were saying that there's something greater than that. So that's what I'm saying. It is. It's that destiny. So if you're gonna, it's not just some ability that makes one person better than the other. Because if it's just a hard system, where one person, if it's a hard system, then it's just one person more skilled than the other.
Mhm.
And you could think of that, in our that would be just like our world or something where someone has more money or talent than another person, and everyone obeys the same skills. It's just some are better than others,
Mhm.
and like it's not such a great, that's not something that so many people can, um, what's vibe with. What's the word?
Relate to.
Relate to. And what really makes a novel great is that like they use a fantasy novel great is that they use this power for something that bigger than themselves.
Yeah,
That's what we want to see,
a story needs a good hero.
right? And not just so like magic on its own isn't sufficient. It's the same, in magic acts. I know we haven't discussed them so much. We talked about the prestige and a bit what makes a magical act.
Uh-huh.
But like you had said, it's not just enough to do the act. There's got to be a story to it, a flair. You want to see something like there's no act that the magician just goes on stage and just goes whoop, boom, walks off the stage, cracks jokes,
Right.
wants to be relatable.
Mm-hmm.
Someone in my family, he's got some really good card tricks, and he shows them to me because I like card tricks, but it gets like really annoying. People say like, "Wow, it's so annoying card tricks." Like, oh, he's gonna do magic. It's like I always thought, hey, why? Why is it annoying? But like it happens to you enough, you're like you get frustrated that you don't understand
Uh-huh.
why they're able to do that. You
Uh-huh.
want to know why, and it's just an endless like cycle of frustration.
Uh-huh.
That's what you need to crack jokes with it. You need to be relatable.
Huh.
The whole thing, in every fantasy novel, anyone with magic, with power, is always fighting off the people who want to take them down because of that power imbalance, because of that, or they want to use their power, or it corrupts them or something.
Uh-huh.
So if it's not used in the right way, then it destroys itself.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Indeed, indeed. And it's interesting. I think that what makes fantasy as opposed to like, comic books, I guess are more sci-fi. Like Spider-Man is sci-fi, would you say?
I don't know about that. Maybe. I mean,
It's its own
It's
genre?
superhero.
Superhero genre.
Superhero. Yeah.
Right. So I guess for superhero genre it has to take place in the modern world? No, not necessarily.
No, I don't. No, I don't think so.
I guess they just have to be like an individual hero, but it doesn't have to be that. Like fantasy often has to be set in this time of medieval period. Not sure why, but
Yeah, I mean, Star Wars is very much a
sci-fi.
blend of fantasy and sci-fi. It's
Right.
kind of like fantasy in space.
Interesting. So I always saw the distinction as like where like is it set in a time where there is no technology and then they're using magic and this is or where technology is at a very primitive scale. But as soon as they have technology at a larger scale, then it's sci-fi.
Well, is Harry Potter fantasy or sci-fi?
It is contemporary fantasy.
Okay.
It's at a point at a juncture in time which is very odd because technology is starting to outpace uh, the magic. Magic.
Can you have a futuristic fantasy story?
Um, if it takes place like if it's in Star Wars and you're on Tatooine, let's say it was a time in the future, far, far away, in a galaxy far, far away, but they were just primitive. Then yeah, that's fine. But maybe that's an evasion of the question.
A little bit, yeah. The reason why Star Wars is not just sci-fi. I mean, it's sci-fi. It's also fantasy. I think it's both. You can call it both. It's sci-fi fantasy. Um, the reason why it's both, why it's definitely at least fantasy, is that the Force is not technological. The Force is mystical. The Force is not. It's not because of the technology of the galaxy, because of the spaceships and the this and all the different technologies they have. It's not because of that the Force exists. It's not. We're not explaining the extra powers that people have through science. It's fantasy. It's through the Force. We also have extra powers that people have through science, which is that they can get into spaceships and travel at light speed, or that they can shoot blaster bolts, or the Death Star. The Death Star is sci-fi. The Force is fantasy.
Okay, so the Force is something that's more um, magical. You're affecting your will um, onto reality without any like real scientific explanation.
Mm-hmm.
It has this mystical religious background to it.
Yeah.
Um, and we just ignore anything to do with midichlorians because that would try to give too much of an explanation to it,
Yeah.
which we don't want.
We don't want that. It takes away the mystery.
And then would you have to work for the you have to work for the Force, just like you have to work for magic.
Yeah. That's also an important part, I think, of good magic systems, that you have to work for them.
Hmm.
They're not easy. But yeah,
But they're sort of easy at the same time. They can't be like
right.
explained, at the end of the day. It has to like at the end of the day, you have this talent, you're given it, you just do it. And you can practice it to be better, but like you can't explain. It's like, being good at sports, You could practice it, but like either you have it or you don't at the end of the day.
I suppose. Meaning, but I think a good story, there's a sort of truth at the heart of any good story, which is that no matter what advantages you have, you never really get ahead, because whatever advantages you have give you more responsibility, they give you more scrutiny, they give you more problems, and so you'll just have a different set of problems. And so even if you have the Force, even if you are a wizard, well, now you have to learn how to harness this power. Now you have a Dark Lord to deal with. Now you have, even though you used to be an orphan with no friends, and now you're super famous, now you also have enemies, and you also have people out to get you. Like you mentioned before that one of the appeals of magic is that like we want to just be able to like snap our fingers, chant an incantation, and to have something happen. It's like God. That is part of the appeal, but a good story, I think, pulls you into that with that, but then shows you how like real life still comes and hits you. Because even if you have all these advantages, you're still going to have challenges. And so at the end of the day, you're always still pushed against the hard reality of life in some inescapable way.
Mhm. What I like in Harry Potter is that if you're magic, then you get to have magic diseases, and it's like, if you're a Muggle, I don't think if you get exposed to dragonpox, I don't think you can get it, right? Or maybe you can,
I don't
because
know.
it's weird. Because you can definitely have your memory erased as a Muggle,
Yeah.
but I think magical diseases, that's something that like it's really hard to cure with magic. So to me, even though I'm just making this all up, it's all made up, it would seem to me that magical diseases are what happens because you're filled with magic. Like it's this corruption that starts happening to you as a result of being magical,
Uh-huh.
and no matter how powerful you are, you can't really do much against it. So it's like it's a disease. It's like gout, a disease of the rich, which might not really be true, but
Uh-huh.
maybe I'm exaggerating. And sorry if you have gout, but like it's what happens when you eat like too much red meat or something. So you're not gonna get that if you're poor and can't afford meat.
Uh-huh.
So, so that's related to what you were saying, I think.
Mm.
Um, so I think we should talk a bit about superstition and the paranormal.
Are we done with time travel?
Uh, no, of course not.
Of course not.
What would you like to say
Well,
about
so
time
I,
travel?
I had a different approach to time travel when I was thinking about this, which wasn't just explaining the grandfather's paradox, but also thinking about the different mechanics of time travel, the different ways that it works. You mentioned there's the multiverse, but we touched a little bit on the Harry Potter time travel, but we didn't really get to the difference or what makes Harry Potter time travel the way it is. Um, the two works of fiction that I think are good to compare are Back to the Future and Harry Potter. In Back to the Future, when Marty goes back in time, he can affect the past, and his choices have an effect on the past to the point that he can even do things that make his siblings disappear in his photo or make himself disappear. For example, he catches the attention of his own mother. If the events continue to play out, his mother is not going to marry his father, so he's not even going to be born. So he starts to feel himself disappear. That's the Back to the Future concept of time travel. Essentially, the past in the past you were not there. You are now here. You can make the decision to go back in time, and then you will be in the past, and then your actions will cause a different timeline to occur, and will affect the future as well. Will affect your time, your present time, where you decided to go back in time. In Harry Potter, and also the Terminator, by the way, the Terminator also does the exact same thing that Harry Potter does, which I guess means that Harry Potter does what the Terminator does, because the Terminator came first. You cannot change the past, except that you can because you already did. um, if if I go back in time to the year 1950, let's say I right now have a time machine and I go back in time to the year 1950. In the Harry Potter conception of time travel, I was already in the past in 1950. I had to be because I am going back in time to 1950 right now. So I was always in 1950. When I passed 19, I didn't pass it. I wasn't born. When the people of 1950 passed the year 1950, 75 years ago, I was there.
The same one, same person.
Depends what we mean by the same person. um, in my stream of consciousness, it wasn't me. Like I don't experience it as it having been me.
Right, of course.
I will now do it, and I am going to then follow the path that my past slash earlier self did. I will do the exact same thing. without knowing that I'm doing the exact same thing, without knowing how to do the exact same thing. Whatever I do, I will happen to do the exact same thing that my previous iteration of myself who went to the 1950 did. I will make the exact same things happen, make the exact same changes, resulting in the exact same timeline that I'm in right now, leading to the point in 2025 where I then go back in time to 1950. But it's not a loop. It's in a sense a loop, because when you conceive of what's going on, it's a loop. But each iteration of me is not in a loop. I will only do this once.
Mm-hmm.
But the main difference is that it's all predestined. It's as if from the beginning of time, before time began, I was predestined to go back in time in the year 2025 to the year 1950, and let's say, stop someone from getting run over by a car or something. It was predestined that I would do that. So even the first time that 1950 comes around, I save the person. Now, the only way this can possibly work, at least, well, it seems that the only way this is likely to work, or maybe this is just kind of a thing that happens in stories that use this particular concept of time travel because it makes it more effective for the audience, is that the characters are not exactly aware that this is the way it works. And the characters, it's as if the time travel is just a bit more sophisticated than what the characters understand about it. And also that the character can't know that he already succeeded, because then he wouldn't go. But somehow, if he did know that he already succeeded, it would still be built. It would still be built in somehow that it would all fit together. But in Harry Potter, for example, it works because when they go back in time to save Sirius and Buckbeak, they don't really know that they already saved them, even though Hermione does, because she knows how it works. But she doesn't see it happen. She doesn't know how it happens. She doesn't see Sirius saved. So the only contradiction that arises is free will, because in the Harry Potter timeline, when Harry and Hermione go back in time, before they went back in time, Sirius and Buckbeak were already saved. They were out of sight, so they still go back in time. But what if they weren't out of sight? What if they were right there, and they're like, we have to go back in time to save Sirius and Buckbeak, but they're right here? Do they have a choice to not do it? They don't, because in order for Sirius and Buckbeak to be there, they had to have done it. It's possible that if this were to happen in Harry Potter, Harry would be like, oh, we don't have to do it. They're right there. Hermione would be like, no, we do, because we have to do it because that's the destiny. And what if they don't do it? It still raises questions, but I do find it a much more clever conception of time travel, because in both Harry Potter and in the Terminator, it's a bit subversive in the sense that you have the kind of classical way we think time travel is going to work is the Back to the Future way. Whenever we start a movie or a book where time travel appears, we think it's going to work the way we imagine it is kind of the Back to the Future way. It's you go back in time, you make changes, it changes the future, et cetera. Unintended consequences, you then run into problems, and you're like, oh, I shouldn't have changed that. The reality that I made was actually worse than the reality that I was trying to escape from. Things like that. But then the Terminator or Harry Potter kind of pull this twist on you where it's like, it was all built in. You went back in time because you already went back in time, because you had to go back in time, because the whole timeline depends on you going back in time. You're familiar with the Terminator?
Sort of.
So in the Terminator,
Arnold Schwarzenegger shows up
butt naked,
steals a motorcycle and some leather jackets.
Okay, so in the Terminator, in some future time, which actually is only 2029, it's only 4 years away.
Yeah, okay.
In the year 2029, humanity is enslaved or oppressed by some
Facebook
artificial intelligence or whatever. And there's this hero of the humans who rises up and saves mankind from this Skynet, from this futuristic machine or whatever. And then the Skynet machines, they send back Arnold Schwarzenegger back in time to stop John Connor from being born. It's to stop the hero of the humans from being born so that the machines will win in the future. That's what they do.
And who's Sarah Connor?
Sarah Connor is John's mother. So they go back in time to kill Sarah Connor before she gives birth to John. So the humans send back somebody. The humans have some knowledge that the machines are doing this. The humans send back Ryan. What was it? I don't forget his name. They send back a guy whose goal is to stop Arnold Schwarzenegger from killing Sarah Connor so that Sarah Connor can give birth to John so that John can save humanity. Okay? The guy who goes back in time falls in love with Sarah Connor and fathers John. So it's only by him going back in time that John is able to be born and then John saves humanity because his father is actually from the future. He came back in time and followed him. So it's all predestined.
Hmm.
It's the decision of the human, to go back in time in the future caused the present.
Interestingly, in Rick and Morty, they teach time travel to snakes. Like there's a snake world,
Hmm.
for a reason,
Okay.
uh, because they need to use it or something. And then they know that they're gonna want, like, so that it basically destroys their society because they keep sending snakes back in time to kill Snake Hitler, and then another snake is sent back in time right before to stop that snake, and then another snake is sent back. So that Hitler's like in his bathtub one day, and then there's a snake there about to shoot him, and then and then it's just like a billion snakes all shooting each other, and it's pretty funny with the just the image of it.
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, if we're saying that there's this predestined thing that has to happen, okay.
Hmm.
Let's say I go back in time I go into my time machine 10 minutes into the past, and then I see myself about to walk into the time machine,
Hmm.
and I shoot him, and then someone has to go back into the time machine to go back in time,
Yeah.
because so I go back into the time machine, back in time 10 minutes,
Okay.
and so now I come back and I see someone, I see myself, I gotta shoot him, and then go in the time machine,
Okay.
and then you do it again, stuck in an endless loop.
Okay.
Same person, because I haven't died. I'm just going back into the time
Yeah.
machine over and
If
over.
it's an endless loop, it's an endless loop.
So that's an endless
If you yourself go back in time over and over and over again,
loop. Hmm.
you are going back in time over and over and over again. Sure, yeah.
Okay, but if I was born to my previous version of myself,
Okay.
and then I go back in time,
Yeah.
father myself,
Yeah. Father yourself.
I'm really
Right.
just fathering a different, or grandfathering yourself, whatever.
Yeah.
It's a different person that I'm grandfathering, who just happens to go back in time. They
It,
don't have to, but
it's you, but
it's you.
it's a different you.
It's a different.
It's a different iteration of you.
Uh-huh. Okay. If you say so. It seems it's still the same person, but
Well, you haven't explained how there are ever multiple of you. In Harry Potter, Harry goes and sees himself. How's he seeing himself? There's only one of them.
well, he sees his previous self,
Yeah.
and that previous self, guess what he's gonna do? He's gonna go back in time
Yeah. But he's not.
and then do it again.
His previous self is going to go back in time, but he's not going to go back in time again. He already went back in time.
Hmm. So there's this simultaneity that you just exist at all times.
No, I'm not saying that. Every time you go back in time to the past, you you don't even really create a new instance of yourself. You have simply now brought your present self into the past, where your past self must also exist, right? The past contains your past self, assuming that you were in the past, assuming that you went back in time to a time where you were alive and present. So of course your past self is there, but you can't just have your past self there because you're there as well. You just went there from the future. So there are now two of you in the past.
There could be two of you at the same time, and it'd be the same person with slightly different streams of consciousness.
What does that mean?
But
Slightly different streams of consciousness.
because what you know now, you didn't know yesterday. What it's a slightly different stream of consciousness. It's the same person.
No, you can't have a slightly different stream of consciousness. It's as much a different stream of consciousness as it's a different stream of consciousness from Ron or from Hermione. I'm going back to Harry Potter.
Oh, that's what you're saying.
Yeah,
This is
it's
completely different.
you're saying it's slight. I know why you're saying this. It goes back to our conversation from episode 4, last episode. I know why you're saying this, but I will not yield ground on this. The fact that previous Harry knows most of the things that this Harry knows and has a lot of the same personality and whatever however we want to define mental makeup, it's similar. It doesn't in any way mean that the streams of consciousness are only slightly different. They're completely different. The streams of consciousness are as different as Harry's stream of consciousness and Hagrid's stream of consciousness.
Okay, what if you break the stream of consciousness for like a fraction of a second? Have you now become a new stream of consciousness? Like,
Like if you're unconscious for a moment.
yeah, sure. But even more than that, like if you cease to exist, if you disappear from reality,
Uh-huh.
and then you appear, that's basically traveling into the future,
Uh-huh.
and appear 5 minutes later.
Yeah.
Has your stream of consciousness stopped? Are you a new person now? Has your old self died and become a new one that has been born?
I mean, it depends. It depends. Not necessarily, that's for sure.
All right. I mean, one thing that we didn't discuss is, and that probably has a lot to do with it, is how are you traveling in time? If you get into a
Oh, I
machine,
wanted to get into that too.
right. So one of the classic problems of like, okay, let's say you have a machine that's gonna go back in time somehow. First of all, you got to make sure that you're not just gonna appear in the middle of of this middle of a dinosaur stomach or something. The other problem is that space and time are one and the same, and that you can't only travel through time, you also have to travel through space, and that the planet is moving and it doesn't exist where it was uh, back when you want to travel.
Uh,
And so, what does that even mean? Where is this time machine until you get there? Like, does it exist? Is it basically like you go into a house and then that house has to be standing, existing all that time that you're going back in time? Like, what if you go back in time to before the time machine was created? Then it's not like, does that pose a problem, or is it like, yeah, how besides the fact that it's not even possible, like, do you create an envelope of space? Is it like a ripple, a hole that you make in the fabric of space time where you can just like step through and like don't touch the edges because they're razor sharp and they'll slice you in half. Um, so if you could like walk into a hole that like takes you into another universe that was that the earlier universe, the younger universe, okay, maybe it could work like that. I don't know. Maybe you just have to go so fast that you go faster than the speed of light, and then all of a sudden, uh, you're going back in time. But you know, that'd be the classic. So it's just a matter of speed. So you have to go really, really fast.
Even though going really fast sends you to the future,
Right.
but you're suggesting that maybe there's a turning point.
Yeah. And you probably crash. But that's the only current way like we could even think of like such a thing is either wormholes or going really
What is a
fast.
wormhole?
A wormhole is these theorized like breakdowns of the fabric of space-time where like let's say in a black hole, time just stops existing. So if you were to go into one, you'd be shredded to nothingness. Um, but technically you would wind up traveling pretty fast in time, and who knows really where that matter shows up. Um, they don't know if it's in a different universe or if it's different point in time or something, or it's just like destroyed forever. Uh,
But we have no reason to believe that you can travel that it will go to the past in some way somehow.
well, I mean, time breaks down, so at least early science fiction theorized that maybe it's possible that this is a gateway or something. Um, the
It's a
other,
gateway to go into the future. I think there's a big difference between going to the future and going to the past.
yes, because we're traveling to the future right now,
Yes.
and you could go at different speeds.
When you go to the future, you remain going in the direction you're going in terms of time, and you just slow down your pace while everyone else continues.
And there are no paradoxes as long as because you stay out of your cone of things that you could affect.
Yeah.
um, but I mean, in a black hole everything breaks down to the point where we don't really even understand what's going on because which is interesting, we have these fundamental laws of nature. Anything that goes against them is magic, if it happens. But even our most fundamental uh, equations and laws that govern the universe, they do break down under certain conditions. So we don't have a complete version, uh,
Mm-hmm.
a picture of the universe
Mm-hmm.
and what happens. The other thing with wormholes is that it's theorized that like at the smallest scale, time also breaks down, and like the very fabric of time like is maybe composed of these little like aberrations, and that if you could like expand one, then you could go into one, and then it will like warp. You basically warp space time. You could warp space time with mass, and maybe if you have negative mass, it'll have the opposite effect of instead of bringing you closer into the future, it has the the opposite.
What is negative mass?
It's just theorized. I mean, there's antimatter, but that just annihilates regular matter. Um, Negative mass would basically be, it would just react the opposite way of it's just a theorized thing, I'm pretty sure. Just like negative gravitrons or something that would have the opposite effect of gravity. Because there's a lot of symmetry in the universe and in nature. So it's theorized, if one thing ha- goes in one direction, then it stands to reason that maybe there exists something that goes in the other direction, so that's not just arbitrary. Um, Although there are, yeah, maybe there are some things that are set like right-handed. Particles for some reason are just right-handed. Um, but yeah, those are like the only feasible, not even feasible, but theorized ways besides absolute magic that doesn't make any sense and has no rules.
Uh-huh.
Hmm.
It doesn't sound to me like there's any realistic estimation of how traveling to the past could work.
Hmm. Yeah. Also, there's just too many paradoxes, logical paradoxes that would break down, unless you're really traveling to a different universe.
Uh-huh. But also, there's such a huge difference when you consider the physical process because when you travel to the future, the whole universe was able to just continue the way it was going, and you just had to like slow down relatively. So like you just kind of waited in your like relative time thing, and the universe continued. But traveling to the past, it's as if you have to bring the whole universe back to some place. You can't just do something to yourself because the universe will just continue going in the way they were going, like when you travel to the future.
Well,
It's
the
as it,
universe doesn't travel all at the same speed.
yeah, okay.
They're all relative, so you're not really letting the universe go into the future. You're letting
All the
everything relative to you
continue on continue.
on whatever relative path
Right.
it had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that still just reinforces my point. When you travel to the future, you only have to change your relation to how everyone else is traveling in time. You go slower, and then you stop, and you've essentially traveled to the future. To travel to the past, you have to reverse everyone else's
No,
time trajectory.
you just go on your own. The past happened. It existed. Was it real? It had its own trajectory. It's like jumping onto a race car you're jumping from your car onto a car that's going slower. It's all kind of crazy,
But going
but
slower is not the same as going backwards.
no, but the 1960s existed, right?
They did, yes.
It was very much real.
But will we ever get to the 1960s if we just let time go? Time only moves in one direction, forward.
As far as we know.
Very well.
And from our
But I'm
perspective, it already happened. But from other people, you know, right now it's 2025. 2026 is the future. From someone else's perspective, it's the past.
from whose perspective?
People in the future.
Those people,
They're not real people?
they're real once we get there.
Okay, but is it feasible for, something to happen now?
Yes.
So then it could happen in the past too.
No. I don't. I think you're no. See,
I get what you're saying.
you get what I'm saying.
I get what you're saying. That because we know how to travel into the future.
We. It's not just because we know how to travel to the future. There's a reason why we know how to travel to the future. It's actually pretty simple, relatively speaking, because the future is a time that we will get to regardless. Right? If we just wait around long enough, we will get to the future. We know of a way that you can kind of speed up your way of getting there relatively speaking. Like you can speed up your own how you experience getting there. And so that's kind of like traveling to the future. But everyone else just continued the way we're going. You didn't have to change anything for everybody else. The past we will never get to if we just continue. The past is a completely new. To get to the past, no one has ever gone to the past. Everyone has gone to the future. We just did it. We just did it again. We're always doing.
Everyone has been to the past.
No, no,
We were just there.
no. When
We
we were
were
in the
just
past, we were progressing into the future. The past used to be the future.
we were in the past. We were in the past before that.
No,
We
I
were in
think
the past
no, no.
before that. That maybe time, which we spoke about in a previous episode, is just an illusion that we place.
We didn't say it was an illusion. That's the opposite of what I said. And I thought we had agreed that it is a real thing.
Anyways, before we go back to the past and talk about time again,
Okay.
we should be moving into the future
Yes.
because it's inevitable.
We're talking about politicians. We're talking like politicians. We don't want to go back to the past. We want to go forward to the future.
We do not do the hard things and all the other stuff because it is easy.
But because it is good.
Hard.
Hard.
I
Okay.
don't know. So the last thing
Okay.
I think we should talk about is superstition and the paranormal.
Yes.
So
I totally believe in it. I don't know if I totally believe in it. I'm willing to believe in it. But what do we mean by it? I interrupted you, Benjy.
yeah. So I think we can all agree that belief in the paranormal has been reduced. Paranormal, I'm talking about ghosts, spirits, being possessed. It was a big thing when we were kids, and
When we were
before
kids?
I remember, I remember it starting to diminish, to dwindle.
Well, you're older than I am, so.
When we by 1 year, for the record, maybe even less than a year. When's your birthday?
February 26th.
Oh, just put that on the internet for everyone.
Dude,
We
I
are
didn't give the year.
half a month. Yeah, but I guess okay. We're half a month. They'll be able to figure it out from my age.
Okay.
Um,
Half a year.
half a year
Yeah.
older.
Yeah.
So I remember, growing up, there were a lot of videos. Oh, look, here's a ghost, Bigfoot, Cloverfield, all of these movies, about ghosts and witches and stuff. Bigfoot, I don't know. It seemed that with the advance of the internet being able to verify stories in theory, having more witnesses, more things recorded, being able to share more information, uh, reduced everyone's belief that these things exist. Because if ghosts do exist, people should be posting videos of them all the time. Whereas in the past, you could say, "Oh well, I wasn't able to take a picture of it. You have to believe me."
Yeah.
So I think there's something to that. I think the paranormal superstition was like really big for like the past million years, and just like nowadays, for the first time in human history, is taking a big hit.
Uh-huh. Meaning
Um,
the belief in ghosts.
believe in ghosts and spirits and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's still, I think, belief in God still. I mean, it's definitely still very strong. I don't think. I mean, it's definitely dwindled to more than ever in human history, I would say, unless we're going to prehistoric.
I don't
But
know.
then they
It's
kind of believed in
arguable, I think.
spirits. Arguable. It's definitely arguable. We could save that for another episode.
Okay.
Um, but I do think that everyone has some sort of degree of, superstition. Even those that say, "Oh, I'm super rational," of course I wouldn't believe in any of that. Um, I think that if I was to tell, one of these people, "Hey, if you step on this crack, then your grandmother will break her back," you know, a lot of them will be like, okay, I don't believe that, but like, I'm not gonna, just in case, I'm not gonna like step on the crack to show, like, it'll feel weird. There's something like intrinsic to the human spirit, human mind that kind of feels like, oh, I want my team to win, and like, I know that doing this will have no impact on it, but it's just like bad form to do such a thing. Um, Maybe even like, cursing someone, like if I curse people under my breath, no one hears it. I think that's something that like people will still be like, yeah, but you still shouldn't do it, or there's like certain holiness to people apply certain holiness to certain things, even if they're super rational, blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
Like money, like burning money. If there's something like wrong to it, or saying certain words, like saying, the N word to yourself in a room.
Hmm.
There's nothing like they're people, even if they won't do that, even though it has no impact on anything.
Uh-huh.
Um, it's still like kind of a superstition in their way, like cursing that someone in your family should die. It's like why, like I'm just not gonna do it, not to prove a point. I'm sure there are people that will be like, I'm gonna do it because you said so to prove that I'm not gonna do it. But
Uh-huh.
you fall victim to some sort of like way of thinking about this and having to like dust yourself off and clean yourself of this of something.
Hmm.
You're affected by it.
Yeah.
um and like there are other like strong taboos that in a way are superstition, even if they're not ghosts, but like we all have taboos, saying bless you. um
I think especially, yeah, that's a good point. But
yeah,
I think especially, I don't know this experience myself. Thank God I haven't had a loved one who has passed away.
and
Um,
saying thank God is also,
yeah, exactly.
because I don't think, and look, I don't know what religion. I don't think religion even says, your religious beliefs, that saying it will actually do anything. It's just something you say to feel comfortable, right?
Yeah, it's something. It's some. I think the motivation is to not take good things for granted. To kind of whenever something good happens, to not ever get into a mindset of like, yeah, because like I deserve it and my life is going to be good and I'm going to be fine. I don't have to worry about anything. Like always like be in a mindset of like, wow, anything good that happens, like I should be grateful and not take it for
Hmm.
granted.
Right. It's in bad form to curse yourself for no reason.
Hmm.
Why take that for granted? Why say, oh, my grandmother should die?
So yeah, so what I was going to say is I think especially people will if they have if they have a grandmother who has passed away, um, to say anything bad, like they for sure would not like
Speak ill of the dead.
in the privacy of their own room, like no one's around. They're not gonna say like, "Grandma, you, Grandma, you suck. I hated you." Like this, there's even more of a sense once they've passed. Maybe it's out of respect for the dead, but I think there's also even more of a sense once they pass. Like maybe they are listening.
Right. Like
In some way.
in some way, like there's something like, even if you say it, or even if you like say it to specifically like to counter it, like it'll mess with you because you're like, what if, like, it just feels weird, there's something wrong about it
Yeah.
that can't really be explained. So it's definitely easy to see how superstitions were much more prevalent in the past when people didn't understand how things work. There were a lot less explanations. The world was more of a mystery. Like, why is my sheep dying? Why are my crops not surviving this year? They didn't know. Oh, there's too many alkalines or salts in the soil. You have to use fertilizer, replenish. They had to come up with some explanation,
Yeah.
and usually it wasn't a good one.
Hmm.
I love this experiment with they they have people in a room, and then they give them $1 at random, but the person thinks in the room, he thinks that he's done something to trigger this. So then they start inventing all of these dances and random movements because they think, oh, that's what triggered it, when it's just random.
Uh-huh.
We like to create order and structure out of chaos. We like, that magic, that power, that control that we give, that we desired. That's where magic comes from. That's one of the other sources.
Uh-huh.
And then there are conspiracy theorists that um, and pseudoscience and some of that stuff that I think is also like taking it to too much of an extreme, that it's kind of like a disorder that you want to, yeah, the earth has to be flat, you know because they they think everyone's out to get them, like it's a paranoia that takes over.
Hmm.
um, and now we can identify it, but in the past, like it was harder to separate out those people, and they had more of a sway on things, and as well, everyone was just less, I guess, educated about these things, and it's an interesting world we live in,
Definitely.
and we still have to find the magic in it.
Nice.
We should strive to, at least the wonder part, the imagination.
Yes. Cool.
All right.
Is that all?
I think I'm ready to about wrap it up.
Me too. Been about 2 hours. Oh, you don't know how long it's been.
I have no idea. It
Wow.
feels like 10 minutes.
An hour 56 minutes. It's a good time.
This has been the Benjy and Cal podcast.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Stay safe.